There was interesting reactions from all kinds of platforms, by the way, about coverage of the parade last week. We detected it here, Alex and I, but others do. The American government clearly was trying to dial down coverage of the parade, as if dialing it down would make any difference.
First of all, the coverage you're talking about, I find, like you said, the US is toning it down. And also, I
Yeah.
see a lot less claiming all the technologies China is now copying from the West. I don't
Oh
hear
yeah,
that as
no.
much.
That's hardly sustainable anymore, given that China has all kinds of technologies that the West hasn't got. I mean, it's
Yeah.
we are now slipping into the alternative situation where the Chinese, you see, are these terrifyingly clever people who are obviously intent to conquer the world, and they are fiendishly working on all kinds of new technologies that we must catch up on. So be prepared. The next narrative is already in the works, and it's going to be uglier than the older one.
And also, I still think the West doesn't truly get the message because if you look at the parade toward the end of it, there was the peace, the doves of the peace. There were, I think,
Yeah,
50,000 of them flying, and
yeah,
then there's
yeah,
some colorful balloons. Now, China's message is yes, we have the powerful weapons, but we love peace. We still
yeah,
want to preserve peace. That's the priority. When you see the replay of the different footages, I just don't see that part
no,
being
no,
highlighted. It's always this weapon, that weapon. And of course, the soldiers marching was really beautiful, perfect. Some
yeah,
people even call it looked like AI generated. So that's a lot of
yes,
replay. But there is no one I see replay that part, the
no.
Beijing Doves.
I saw one reference to it
Okay.
buried in an article
Okay.
in the media here. But the interesting thing about it, it managed to be sarcastic about this. It suggested that the doves had been trained some way or indoctrinated. I mean, I really, I'm not making this up. It managed to take that very gentle and, as you said, peaceful act and make it into something sinister. This is very much the start of the whole parade. I mean, one ought to say that a show of force is not surprising, given one, what was being celebrated, which was a military victory.
Mhm.
I mean, let's
Yeah.
never forget that is one thing. And secondly, given the force that is being currently deployed against China.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that China would want to highlight both its military for what it achieved in the past and for what it might have to do in the future is unsurprising. It doesn't mean that China is looking for a fight.
Mhm.
It means that China is saying, if you want to fight us, well,
Mhm.
we're here. We're not going away. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's a clear enough message. But China has never picked fights. I mean, given what we're going to be talking about in the program today about attacks on Qatar, attacks on the Houthis, attacks on everything. I mean, the way people still could talk about China,
Mhm.
which hasn't been at war with anybody for decades, as the potential threat is truly remarkable, actually.
The doves, they are from Beijing and the surrounding residents volunteered. There is a dove club in Beijing. So people will give their doves for loan for a day or something. And those doves just flying back to their owners. So
Not
there's,
not a single article I have seen, including the one that I just mentioned. The article I mentioned
yeah,
certainly didn't mention anything like that,
yeah,
which of course casts the matter into an even further light.
yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Those
mm.
dove owners, they're very proud that they got a certificate,
Yeah,
that their doves participate this and that. And apparently that's a pretty standard thing they do when there's national
yeah,
holidays. China always wanted to project this
yes,
peace
yes,
message. So
yes,
they use the
yeah,
doves a lot. And then so these dove owners, so they're
yeah,
pretty familiar with the process. So anyway,
yeah,
the
yeah.
BBC is interesting as always. Now, when you said that they're saying China is a threat, it's kind of like I find like they don't even know how to frame that because they're saying China is a threat at the same time saying, oh, China hasn't been tested in real battlefield, which means China has been peaceful, right? Do you
Yeah.
want to test those
Well,
weapons?
I mean, you put your finger on it. I mean, I mean, they want to have it both ways.
Yeah.
They want to say at one and the same time that China is aggressive and dangerous,
Mhm.
and at the same time they want to say that the Chinese army isn't something you need to take seriously
Yeah.
because it's never been tested in battle. I mean, the inconsistency between the two things never seems to occur to them.
Mhm.
Um, it, it's uh, it's part of the way in which the media landscape in the West works nowadays. Now, once upon a time, well within my memory as an adult, you would have found articles in the media in the West, certainly in Britain, which would have made that very point that you've just
Mhm.
made. There would have been an article, say, in The Guardian, which used to be a very different kind of newspaper, saying, what are you talking about? I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about an army that marches superbly, but has never actually gone to war. How can that be an aggressive army in that
Yeah.
case?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nobody says this. Nobody ever makes those points.
I still feel that the West should spend some more time truly study China. I feel there's a lack of depth, thorough learning from, for example, the BBC. BBC was doing some translation for Xi Jinping's message. What Xi Jinping said in his speech was the Chinese people is not afraid of violence, believing in self-defense and self-reliance. Now, this one was translated by the BBC saying, oh, standing on Tiananmen Gate, President Xi Jinping said his great nation now feared no one. So that sounds more aggressive than what Xi Jinping's
Yeah,
message
it does.
is, right? So they don't even, I don't think that they intentionally doing that. It's just very ignorant when they translate these things. The language is very subtle, right? Very nuanced, and they just throw it in with their own idea. Okay, this must be what he said. Feared no one, but that's not exactly what Xi Jinping said.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I agree with you. I think there may indeed be
Essentially.
a degree of distortion. I mean, I read what Putin says whenever he speaks, and I've long since come to realize that all translations of Putin's words that you see in the media in the West are wrong. I mean, they're distorted and manipulated in some way to give a much different impression from what he has really said. And it looks as if they're starting to do the same thing with Xi Jinping as well. But coming back to your previous point about them not knowing China at all, you're absolutely correct.
Mhm.
And how terrible is that?
Yeah.
And we're talking about a civilization that has done so much. I mean, when I say, I mean, I'm sorry that's actually, I mean, saying that China has done so much, I mean, it's one of the greatest of civilizations. As I pointed out to many of my friends, China has a continuity in its history that no other civilization actually has. The
Mhm.
Chinese people have been in their same region. They have the continuous development from the earliest periods that we know of settlement in their country. You go and find Chinese, markings on pots and things that are millennia old, and you can see how they are already looking towards the Chinese characters that we know today. They already have a distinct Chinese personality. Um, we turn our backs on all of that. We're not interested in it. We're not interested in all of the extraordinary things that the Chinese have done. You talk about, I mean, as you know, I'm interested in Chinese painting. If you name a single Chinese painter to a Westerner, you get blank stares. And that is absolutely incomprehensible to me, given how important Chinese painting is and how accessible it is, by the way. I mean, people who imagine that we're talking about something inaccessible are completely wrong.
Mhm.
So you're quite right. And I'm sorry, I'm speaking a bit emotionally now, but it is something that I feel about very, very strongly.
Yeah. which is why our program is important. I really
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
are more and more people in China are recognizing our conversations,
Yes.
and there were lots of comments saying, yeah, we watch Alexander,
Yeah.
every week,
Oh,
and
just,
etc. So there's lots of people very impressed by how much you know about China,
well,
Chinese history and culture. So just so you know.
well, well. Thank you for that, and thank you for passing that on, if I can say.
The SCO in general, I find we can say it's a big success, among other things. So, for example, Putin himself, now it is a SCO and then followed with the parade. So there were
Yes.
days, a couple of days that they all busy meeting people. So Putin
Yeah.
himself had at least 10 meetings. He met Lukashenko, Erdogan, Kim Jong-un, of course, Xi Jinping. And he's not alone. The leaders, many of them, they go to both. And so during the time in between, they actually mingle with each other, talking to each other, having meetings and discussions. I think it's wonderful. I actually think it's a great thing that they arranged this.
Well, you're completely right. You're absolutely right about this. I mean, this is another thing which I have complained about. I complained about it on a program I did on my own channel, by the way, which, for various reasons, was particularly dialed down, not by me,
Mm-hmm.
but by
Mm-hmm.
the people who curate the platform. I don't want to
Yeah.
say more, but I said, India and China are reconciling and
Mm-hmm.
are finding a way forward, and their leaders meet, and they are happy to be with each other. And you could see that they were. And this is a bad thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what
Yeah.
kind of people have we become? That, two great nations, and there are no greater nations in the world than India and China, are actually finding ways to
Mm-hmm.
sort out their problems. This is a wonderful thing. And we in the West are upset and frightened about it. Donald Trump writes ridiculous posts about how we've lost India and Russia towards a deep, dark China. I mean, what kind of people are we when we talk in that way? And you're absolutely right. And I just go back to what I said in our last program. I mean, it was the meetings were organized superbly.
Mm-hmm.
You could see that everything was done in a way that everybody enjoyed, all these leaders enjoyed and were happy being there. You could see that all the interactions, all of the mood. I mean, I've followed meetings and summit
Mm-hmm.
meetings, and I've seen many of them. I've rarely seen leaders looking as relaxed as they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And much of the credit must go personally to President Xi Jinping himself, because, as I said in the program we did last week, he never put a foot wrong. He was absolutely faultless, and there was this moment at the actual celebrations of the victory where you saw all the guests coming, and there he was with his wife. I presume she's his
Yeah.
wife.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
by the way, can I just also say something? It was interesting to see a leader and his wife who clearly feel very, very warm and happy to be with each other, because
Mm-hmm.
that's also something one increasingly doesn't see anymore. But I won't go into that because that's a personal matter. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, you could see all the leaders. You could see how Xi Jinping was greeting them one by one, one
Mm-hmm.
by one, and again he did it superbly. I've seen that done many times. I've been at events, especially in Greece, when that has happened,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean it was faultless. So of course it was a wonderful opportunity to bring leaders from all around the world together. They were all happy. They were all happy to be there. They did an immense amount of business with each other. When I say business, I mean that in good terms. I mean, some of it financial, some of it
Mm-hmm.
economic, some about security. They got to know each other better. They obviously were happy to be there with each other. And that is what summitry is for. That's what it's about. That's what you do. Not long faces and angry people and constantly maneuvering and trying to find ways for one person to win out against the other. I mean, that's ridiculous.
About the Siberia 2 gas pipeline, I
Mm.
saw your program. Now you mentioned that those are at least part of those gases that were supposed to go to Europe
Yeah,
and now are directing to China now.
yeah,
So
yes.
meaning those gas will not go back to Europe now, right?
Never. Never. I mean, that is what we have done to ourselves. Now, I read somewhere, I think this is probably wrong. I think this is too high, but I read somewhere that Power of Siberia 2 will produce 18% of China's energy. I am sure that is too high, but it
Hmm.
will make a difference. I mean,
Hmm.
it will increase China's energy. It will make it easier for China to develop its energy complex.
Hmm.
We know how important that is for AI development and other high technology, and how important it is that China is investing in all of this. In Europe, we're doing the opposite. And Russia was going to be the source of gas,
Hmm.
which was going to provide our fossil fuel energy until we sorted out the green transition. I doubt that we will ever sort out properly the green transition. I'm very pessimistic about how we're doing that in Europe. We don't make batteries, we
Hmm.
don't do any of the things that we need to do to make that effective, not on anything like the scale that we require. And of course, we don't even have the energy that we need in order to do that, even that do that properly. As a European, I am very depressed about this, but the Chinese government sees, looks forward, and and they've done it. I mean, they've achieved it.
Do, do you know Fox host Jesse Waters? He actually suggested that the Siberia 2 gas pipeline should be bombed. He
Yes, I
said
saw
that
that.
in,
I saw the program, and again, by now, I'm going to say this. I'm afraid when I see things like that, I'm no longer shocked. I'm no longer surprised, because to repeat again, that's the sort of people we have become. And we've become people like that. Remember what I said to you about how in the West we have violence is a political violence, and conflict is part of our DNA. Well, you see in another example, you don't build bridges, you don't construct pipelines, you don't do those things. Whenever somebody else does it, you're already talking about blowing it up, even if it's said as a joke, which, by the way, it wasn't. I mean, if you actually listen to the program,
mhm,
it wasn't meant as a joke.
mhm.
Even as a joke, it would have been absolutely the wrong thing to say. And the fact that it's been said at all, the fact that it's said without any criticism, without people rounding on him and saying,
Mhm.
what are you talking
Mhm.
about? I mean, what you're talking about is terrorism,
Yeah, yeah,
straightforwardly.
yeah.
Nobody says that. No one is bothered. No one is concerned. We just carry on talking like that, and then we're surprised that more and more of the world is turning its back on us.
I feel like when he says something like that, it's almost like an indirect admission that the US is behind the bombing of the Nord Stream because he
Yeah,
take it so lightly. And
yeah,
okay, I don't like this pipeline. I'll just bomb it. That's pretty much
correct.
he admitted, right?
Yes, absolutely. Um, by the way, I should just quickly add an act of terrorism and an act of war.
Hmm. Yeah,
I mean, if the
yeah,
United States goes about blowing up pipelines in other
mhm,
people's countries,
yeah.
between one country and another country, that is an act of war against
Well,
them.
yeah, absolutely,
No
yeah.
question. No question.